Raise your hand if you've ever been stared at or complimented while you're walking in a way that made you feel uncomfortable. Raise your hand if anyone has ever hit you, pushed you, touched you, groped you in a way that made you feel uncomfortable.
I remember this vividly. It still traumatizes me to this day, and it also influenced how I move and navigate throughout the world. So I remember I was 15 years old, walking from school. It was a nice spring day.
This man, I seen him trying to approach me, so I tried to avoid him.
This guy, he's dropping off his child. He was looking at me. I look down at the ground. I don't make eye contact with him. I don't engage with him. I don't speak to him.
He kept consistently calling out for me, trying to get my attention. And I told him I wasn't interested and walked past.
And he goes, Ayo, tan jacket, come here. I keep walking. He's like, Ayo, come here, I know you fucking hear me. At this point, my heart is racing. Only thing I can hear is my heart beating through my chest.
When I looked back, I saw the man continuously walking behind me and still calling to me, and I grew in shock.
And he starts to follow me. I'm 5'3", he's over 6 foot. He quickly catches up to me and he grabs me.
When I realized I didn't have my mace on the side of my book bag, to get him away, or at least get him to cut a block or stop following me, I shouted out, "Leave me alone before I mace you." And I don't think he heard me the first time because he kept walking towards me and kept telling me, "Excuse me, miss, can I have your time?"
And I rip out of his grasp and I'm like, "Can you leave me the fuck alone? I'm 15 years old. You shouldn't be talking to me." He goes, "Yo, why are you making a scene?" This is what I'm doing intentionally. He goes, "Yo, why are you making a scene? That's all you had to fucking say. Stop acting like a fucking bitch."
So I screamed again, "Please leave me alone or else I will mace you." And he cut down the next little block. And I basically hurried up to my best friend's house because I felt uncomfortable and not safe.
He leaves me alone, but I'm still scared that he will follow me. So I'm walking, but I walk down past my house and I make sure that he's not following me. And what made this even more scarier is that the area was secluded, almost in the cut. There was no one really around but him and me. Anything could have happened.
I did tell my best friend as soon as I got in the house because I was really traumatized a little bit, because if he was not to listen to me and continue to walk towards me, I had no way to protect myself. Right now, my grandma started me off with mace, but from that situation, I feel as though I need something more bigger or something more powerful to scare whoever's coming up to me. Probably a taser, a little pocket knife, but it's sad to say that as a female my age, I have to carry around that stuff to feel safe in my own environment.
I've known, friends, childhood friends who've carried tasers as young as 10 years old to defend themselves. Women are being overly sexualized, and this element of internalized misogyny, it's carried down generation to generation to generation, because it's almost like society doesn't want to fix the problem. There's a clear lack of consent when it comes to things like street harassment, because you are not giving the person permission to holler at you, to call you names, to over-sexualize you at a young age.
Consent is basically agreeing, acknowledging, understanding that whatever it is you're doing or interacting with me is a yes or no. If obviously it's not a verbal yes or it's not a verbal no, you can still see the signs if somebody interested or non-interested.
You're giving consent anytime you allow someone to come up and hug you or borrow something from you,
We recognize that there are certain situations where it's harder to say no. Maybe you were brought up culturally or by right of your gender that saying no is difficult for you. So that might not come naturally to you. So what could be a no for one person might look actually could we slow things down a little bit? Or, oh, I don't know if I want to do that right now. Sort of like a soft no. So instead of telling people to look for no's, we actually, as sex educators in a field, are really recommending folks to look for yeses. The idea of yes means yes, so that you're actually asking for permission as you go along.
I was never really taught consent. I never learned anything from my parents or anything, so this is a new thing.
Nobody ever taught me what consent is. I only learned it at POWER, If it wasn't for this, I would not be talking about this.
The one time that we did have a sex education class, it wasn't about consent. It was more about like being safe while having sex, but never about consent.
Parents that expect the burden of sexual education to solely be on the school. And if that school doesn't have funding, if that school only teaches sex ed for one class period out of 4 years of school, and they start you back in all the way later in the senior year, you have an issue because these sex ed classes are not talking about consent.
We don't realize like the problem until like something big happens. Like let's hear somebody gets raped in the school. Now all of a sudden it's a problem, but we didn't take our time to look what led up to it.
Rape is definitely a crime that happens frequently, but it happens because there's a culture that allows it to happen.
Well, there was a couple times I walked down the halls, I see people smacking, like guys smacking girls' butts and stuff like that.
Low-key, it's a game to us now. I feel so bad saying this, but yeah, it's a game to us. We basically bet who's gonna get the girl or who's gonna talk to her.
Being a student, I don't ever see teachers like stopping any of these things going on. Security guards like watching, like listen as these things happen.
We have gym class and all the girls be supposed to wear tights. Boys be like, oh my gosh, like why you wearing that tight? Like why you wearing that? That joint, your ass fat. Why you wearing that? You trying to get my attention and stuff like that. I'm not wearing tight because I'm trying to get somebody's attention.
I've been told multiple times to cover up because there are men in the house. You know, men that are my blood, men that I may not know but are family friends. You know, as a young girl, 7, 8 years old, I've been told not to wear shorts, not to wear a skirt, to put leggings underneath, to cover up after I've just gone swimming. And you know, this is really damaging to a young girl's mind because it's like your body's being sexualized when you're 7 years old. Why are my shoulders out or my knees out? Something so sexual, something that I have to cover up. Instead of grown men that are supposed to be of my blood, you know, they're the ones who aren't supposed to be looking.
When you're a young girl that have a figure or a nice body, people expect you to wear like stuff that covers you, but like we're human and we like to dress to feel like pretty. And so I guess people might say, well, that happened to you because of how you dressed, or you basically like victim blaming.
We recognize that there's about 80 to 85% of stories that are not getting reported, whether because victims or survivors don't believe anything is going to happen, or maybe the person who violated their boundaries are somebody in a position of power.
I sometimes don't feel comfortable sharing that kind of story because I'm usually blamed for what's happened. I'm sometimes questioned about what I was doing, what I could have done to prevent it, instead of, you know, why was he approaching me in that kind of way.
When you're armed with the knowledge of consent, when you're armed with the knowledge that it's not your fault if someone attacks you, and it's not your clothes' fault. When you start having that culture of consent, it impacts everybody, the people who've been victimized, the people who may be victimized in the future.
Young men my age really need to realize within themselves the things that are going on, because the first way to solve a problem is to admit that there is a problem.
You have people who are uneducated about it, and if you notice that one of your friends, for example, makes a comment about it or something like that, then I think it's important that you let them know, hey, this is not okay, this is what consent is.
If I see a little girl getting arrested, I'm gonna walk up there and be like, yo, she's my little cousin, what are you doing? Like, why are you pulling her? And then, I mean, he gonna back off.
2017 was a big year for consent awareness, especially with the hashtag #MeToo. So I feel like social media played a big part in that, on people actually learning what consent is and figuring out like, okay, this is wrong.
This is about power and privilege, right? Ultimately, sexual violence is about power, and sexual harassment is about the intersection of power and privilege.
We talk about like different topics within the consent, what it says, can education solve our consent problems? So it focuses mainly on like, did we ever learn about consent? And it not only, it touches on like the issue of race within consent and like the problems with it.
If we keep working at it on our singular level, one person talks to another person, one person talks to their class, the people in that class talk, you can make change. That is how changes are made.